Hi, I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We're Team Binge, and today we are going through episode 5, season 1 of Ted Lasso. We are the podcast Believe, a Ted Lasso podcast,
Great.
Which I was recently informed is just the perfect name for a Ted Lasso podcast.
I came up with it.
You did come up with it. You did an outstanding job in that brainstorming meeting with marketing and marketing research and that one lady with the magic 8-ball. The title of this episode is called Tan Lines. That comes into play in the episode. We'll have a long discussion about tan lines and their meaning to each one of us. What's interesting about this episode is it was written by Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, normal guys get credit like Brendan Hunt, Bill Lawrence, as well as Jason Sudeikis, but the main writer for this was Brett Goldstein.
Gotcha.
Themes of the episode, things that are important, that we are not just hit over the head with, but told by the announcers during the soccer game, are the extra pass, which is something that will carry through not only in this episode, but through the season. I know you haven't seen it, but spoiler alert. Also, the ending of some relationships. I don't think we're going to spoil anything by saying Ted and Michelle, as well as Keely and Jaime. And then the quality of being unselfish, which I felt like last time we talked about accountability, and we defined accountability by saying, being held accountable, which is not a great definition.
That's all right.
Because you should not define a word by its word. So I had to look up unselfishness, and I'm going to give you the dictionary definition.
Wow.
Because I feel like these are the themes that are important in Ted Lasso. Unselfishness, the quality or fact of thinking about what is good for other people rather than yourself. Now, it still has self in the definition on that one, too. So thanks a lot, Merriam-Webster, or whatever the name of the dictionary is.
It is classier, though. I appreciate you doing that extra dive into, definitions.
It was super simple. Took me 30 minutes to Google it, read it, and write it down. No time at all. Start of this episode, we have our boy Higgins pulling up into the weird parking lot of this facility. I will never get over it.
Little mini parking lot.
We meet his boys again, who are in the back seat. His wife, we discover his wife is not a fan of Rebecca. This is just kind of a fun, cold open scene, essentially. I don't really know what the establishing with the family of Higgins is, but what it leads to some great physical comedy, which I'm sure you loved, with Higgins and Ted Lasso.
Well, yeah, because Lasso, he kind of comes in, I think it just says hi to Higgins, or is looking the other way, looking at his phone, and then boom, bangs his head. What, did he bang his head? Was the gate kind of half down? I didn't really stop to look at it.
Tom, I'm glad you asked that question, and I'm glad you're not teeing me up for something that we prepared for. I'm pretty sure what that is it's like a security gate, one of those roll-down gates that they must put, and someone didn't pull it all the way up.
Gotcha.
Because I don't think Jason Sudeikis is a very tall guy, so
no. I'm
sure he's probably not the only one that hit his head.
Well, but I think I like the idea of setting up Higgins with his family. It's just getting more of that dynamic. Because you saw Higgins in the last episode, you realize, oh, he's a family man, because you had really no idea what his backstory was. And I think setting this up and setting up that relationship, as they kind of touch later, that he has a very good relationship with his wife. And it's just the little back and forth they do, his love that he has with his kids. I think that is a keystone to when Higgins talks about his relationship later.
That's true. I guess it also is. That's right. That's what it's establishing, because he's been married a long time. I think the other thing it does a good job of establishing is why Higgins has stayed working for Rebecca.
Yes.
Because the wife makes the comment that because of you, we can afford to get the second car fixed. Also, it's important because one of those kids in the back seat has Beats headphones.
Was he? I was going to ask.
So that is extremely important. Ted hits his face on the gate. It cuts to the intro, which is just, once again, great physical comedy by Jason Sudeikis.
Well, if I may, while we're talking about intros, do you happen to have $5 to give me due to your intro bet?
At this point, based on the bets, I've lost every one of them, and I owe you $10. Do I have that $10? Yes. Did we have to frantically pay the Tooth Fairy this morning at 6 a.m.? And so am I a little bit light on the $10? Maybe. It is what it is. I will give you your money eventually. Stop hounding me, man.
We'll find out.
So then we're at Biscuits with the Boss. Ted's holding something to his forehead because he's bruised. He, being unselfish, is taking the blame, not blaming Higgins for calling for him while he walked through. Maybe it wasn't Higgins' fault. Maybe it is Ted's fault.
I don't know whose fault it was. Maybe it's Nate's fault. Nate's like the kit man. He's probably the first guy in. Maybe he didn't pull the door all the way up.
You know what's interesting? There may be an overlap here because there is a gag in Scrubs where Zach Braff is trying to go through the hospital door, and the janitor, who's like his nemesis, is messing with it. And he's like, oh, maybe someone left like a nickel in there or something like that. And the janitor's like, so if I find a nickel, like, do I have you to blame? So maybe the janitor, Mr. Janitor from Scrubs, just didn't show up to do the door.
I like it.
So we're at Biscuits with the Boss. Rebecca is listening to Ted talk about his marriage because Michelle, his wife, and their son Henry are visiting from America. They're flying in. Ted says he's distracted because he keeps checking the flight status. So that's why he was looking at his phone. He is sharing some issues that him and Michelle have had or are having, and Rebecca makes the comment of, are you sharing this with me because I opened up to you at the gala? Which I think is an unfair thing for her to do, because he was very kind. He listened to her in her moment of crisis. He's clearly going through something, and she could not care. They get on the subject of Oklahoma because that's like their relationship safe word. If you say Oklahoma, the person has to tell the truth. There's a funny bit where he's naming off the songs to Oklahoma. She tries to engage by naming a song, and he's like, no, that's The King and I. She had the wrong musical. I did verify she had the wrong musical.
I was going to say, that's an odd thing to like call out. I wouldn't have known any of the music from that.
Right, but he apparently loves Oklahoma so much that he knows all the songs. She apparently is a King and I fan. So the one thing that stuck out to me as Ted is describing his relationship with Michelle is he quotes her as saying, my constant optimism is too much. So his wife is burdened by his constant optimism.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
You think that's fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be like, so
I'm not going to give anything away, but I think his wife's a bad person. I'm just going to say it.
I mean,
spoilers.
We'll get into it. I think you don't see her perspective through all of this. Like, you don't know. We see Ted. We know Ted is a great guy and all that kind of stuff. But I can absolutely understand living with a man that is constantly optimistic or constantly like doesn't ever seem to be down. Like, that is going to be difficult, because if you feel down, then you feel even worse because this other person is not meeting you at your level, whatever it is. So I think there's more to this than just, you know, your opposed hatred of her.
I don't hate her. Did I say I hated her?
Yeah, well, maybe not hate. Sorry.
Okay.
You don't like.
I'll go on record. I strongly dislike her.
Okay.
Well, my comment to that would be, we know Ted, when someone is down or like depressed, he is there like thoughtfully listening to them and trying to support them. So I understand like maybe someone being annoyingly optimistic, but I don't think that's like grounds for I don't want to be married to you anymore.
I don't think that's ground for like their separation or anything like that, but you can understand how that could become too much, in my opinion. I think like if somebody is any direction, if somebody's super depressed all the time, super happy, super optimistic, whatever it is, if somebody is like so overboard in one direction or another, I think it can wear on somebody, like a couple that's been together. Because I do think like, and I don't think this based on your comments, but I think people can fall out of love. Like, it is possible. There's certainly still a mutual respect. Like her saying, we'll get to it later on, but like her saying that she's trying her best to, you know, still be in this relationship and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's that kind of flip the switch for Ted, that realizes like she's trying to like love him now, as opposed to like it's not there anymore. That flame isn't there. I think that happens to people.
All right, we got into this portion real early, which is fine.
Yeah.
I will not give my feelings away. I will save them for later. The only thing I will say is that if people take marriage vows, they should keep those vows and be miserable until they die.
And be miserable.
I believe that. It's in the good book. All right, so then we find ourselves at Jaime's house. Keely is returning keys.
Which we find out is Jaime's house.
Is Jaime's house, which is, I think, where they were trying on the suit and stuff. Because I think it's the same white kitchen and big glass windows. If they were not made of glass, I don't know what kind of windows they would be. There's another woman in the refrigerator, and by that I mean opening the door to the refrigerator, not inside the refrigerator. This show would have taken a dark turn if Keely came in and there was a woman in the refrigerator.
Keely goes to get a glass of milk, and there's just a
Once
body.
again, Ted Lasso's solving crimes. Jack the Ripper is back. So then they start to talk, because Jaime comes out, and Jaime acts like Keely's going to be mad at him. And he's like, it's not my fault. You broke up with me. In his charming British accent and his black underwear briefs.
Very charming little Speedo outfit, yes.
He looks incredible. All the, I don't know, something to him. And so he says something like, she says, no, I'm not upset. We did break up, although it happened yesterday.
24
and
hours.
You're already with another woman. He's great. He says, how long is a man meant to be alone? What am I supposed to do? Shower by myself.
Myself. I appreciate the English twist there.
Which is just great. He doesn't see any problem with it. Gives you a little bit more on Jaime. Keely thanks Jaime for helping her get over the breakup. He says, you're welcome. And he turns to this random girl and goes, I like to make people feel good. Which is just so great. And that woman is in kind of an awkward situation. But we get a little bit of, she recognizes who Keely is, and we're kind of finding that Keely is, I guess, famous in certain ways.
Well, I mean, she's a model. Like, we see a little poster later of her, shelling that coffee, vodka, or whatever. So, like, people, I'd imagine, are going to recognize her. Like, she may not be a huge model or whatever, like on, I don't know what British fancy magazines are, but people recognize her. And she definitely, that new woman, felt a little starstruck.
Sure. Then we're at the training, and we have some great footwork from Jaime. I'm going to give you the floor. Jaime's driving the ball down the field. He's doing a lot of cool stuff. I mean, rank Jaime's soccer performance on a scale of 9 to 10. Where would you put him, a 9 or a 10?
So it's not so much Jaime's soccer performance as it is the other players' poor soccer performance.
Oh.
He's putting on some moves and stuff, but the comical poor defending of them just walking at him with their legs open so he can hit it through their legs, kind of a thing. But it was still good. He definitely is a talented footballer.
Would you compare those players to when you watch an infomercial and they're like, do you struggle to open a pickle jar? And then it's a person who's really slapping a pickle jar all around.
I think in certain scenes they do a decent job, but even later when they get to the actual game and there's more should be a little bit more aggressive tackling and stuff like that. Guys are absolutely letting up right before they get to him. So it is definitely some of that.
So his footwork you would give a 10 to. The other players are just not putting up much of a
I can understand.
show.
Yeah, I can understand why AFC Richmond has given up so many goals.
Their defense is poor.
It's poor.
Well, their star defender, Sam Obisanya, is way up the field calling for the pass so that he can shoot, and the key part of this scene is Jaime does not pass to Sam. He kicks the goal himself. You were about to say something about our star defenseman, Sam Obisanya. I'll give you the floor again.
I just was going to ask, do we know that's his position? He is a forward. I know Ted later says, hey, we're moving you to midfield, so I guess he kind of has to be defender.
Well, in the pilot episode, they make the comment, the one bright spot of this is we saw the defense of Sam Obisanya.
Okay.
So my assumption is, listen, in soccer, I didn't know there were positions. I thought there was a goalie and then 10 dudes that ran around on the field. So I'm learning about positions, but my assumption was that Sam is a defenseman just based on previous comments.
Okay, that's fair.
So Jaime will not pass the ball to Sam, kicks the goal himself. What's so great, once again, some physical comedy. Ted steps in the way, catches the ball as it's clearly going into the net. Jaime says, that was going in.
And then, Ted's like, well, we'll never know.
We'll never know. We clearly would have known. Like, you can clearly assume it was going in. But just as matter of fact, well, we will never know. It was great. And then Ted is trying to talk to Jaime about taking the extra pass, them as a team, like passing extra. We get a little bit of a window into Ted's eating habits where he talks about...
It is strange. This peanut butter thing is strange.
Okay. All right.
I love the idea, and obviously Roy really loves this idea, which I think is great. So, he says he keeps an open jar of peanut butter just on the counter, is like one of his references, so he had to explain it to the group. I don't know. Like, I feel like having an open, exposed condiment.
Okay.
Is it a condiment?
No, it's not a condiment. It's a meal.
It's not a meal.
So, I think you and I...
Or spread. Can we say spread?
Sure, a spread.
Thank you.
Sure. Like when someone's like, oh, they put out a great spread, like a meal. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You spread it on toast.
No, I do not spread peanut butter on my toast. So
jelly?
You and I are going to disagree a lot on this episode between the relationship stuff and really, I mean, the peanut butter stuff is probably the crux of it. I don't necessarily leave the jar of peanut butter like open on the counter, but I will grab the peanut butter and like eat it by the spoonful.
So you use a spoon, though. You don't just shove your finger in there like Lasso does.
Well, I have a family of like 7 children and a wife, so I'm not going to shove my finger in the peanut butter jar. But I will use a spoon to eat directly from the jar.
No.
Where we got from here was he makes a comment that Sam was as open as the peanut butter jar on my counter.
People know that. People watch the episode.
If
you're watching this, you've watched the episode. You get what I'm getting at.
Okay, I feel like you're upset about this peanut butter thing.
I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed.
Oh, I didn't know I was doing this with my dad. Great.
No, I think the bit is great. It's just leaving an open jar at all times. Like, does peanut butter go bad? Like, if you just leave it out exposed?
No, I don't think peanut butter can ever go bad. But
like honey?
I will agree with you on the lid thing.
Okay, thank you.
It is a little strange to leave. I'm fine with leaving a jar of peanut butter on the counter, but I would definitely put the lid.
That's just
because like a bug would fly in there.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Like even our butter that is out, we put a lid on that. So that is where the bugs stick to.
Yeah.
So then Jaime makes a comment about Sam. He says something rude about Sam's skills. He's like, even when he's open, he's terrible. And then Sam, so great. Just the act of himself. He runs in.
He's like, oh, I heard my name. Beard's like, don't worry about it.
Don't worry. Yeah, the way Beard says, don't worry about it.
I just love Sam. Like, he just comes in. He's like, I mean, he seems like an elementary school footballer playing on the
He's like
pitch.
A golden retriever, I think you've described him before.
He's just so great. He just kind of comes in. He's just super excited and people are talking about him.
I heard my name, guys. It was great. So Ted talks about extra practices. He says, we're not leaving here until we get it right. And then his family shows up at the other end of the field. And he's like, practice is canceled. And then he takes off.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's that little line where Beard has to kind of mention, or I think, is it Nate and Beard? They're kind of talking about like how far the run is.
Nate says, he doesn't realize how far that run is.
And Beard's like, he loves the metaphors.
He's like, metaphor, yep. It's great. And once again, we get to see Ted Lasso's cardio, which is constantly on display when they're running laps, when he's running across the field. It's funny when he gets up to his family, he says, man, I really thought you guys were going to meet me halfway.
Because again, I think it's not like the Rebecca situation of her like hurrying to the door. It was more, he wanted that metaphor, like that long shot of both families coming together.
Right.
That's what he wanted.
Yep. And then we meet Michelle, Ted's wife, and his son Henry. They're at the training pitch where he has just sprinted over to them. We just see he's a good dad. Like, he has jokes with his kid. He spins him around. I guess that's not a definition of a good dad.
No,
but
nailed it. Good dad.
He's clearly engaged. His son's excited to see him.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, you rate the level of the dadness by the kid's reaction.
Yeah.
And the kid was super excited.
Yeah, he's like his hero.
Yeah.
He's excited. Michelle, who is Ted's wife, is played by the actress Andrea Anders. Did you recognize her from anything?
No.
So she's someone that I saw, and I was like, she looks really familiar. And when I looked up her IMDb, I actually expected to see her in like more things that I knew her from. Mm-hmm. She did like some guest spots and stuff, but the show that I mainly knew her from was a show called Better Off Ted, which was like a workplace comedy.
I've heard of it.
With Portia de Rossi, another dude, and several other people.
Ted.
And they did a show. Yes, one of the characters was named Ted, but not Ted Lasso. So it was a show that is actually quite funny, but she was the main person in that one.
Gotcha.
Then we have a quick conversation with Rebecca and Higgins about tickets not being sold. And this is important because Rebecca explains that the team is at...
Yeah, facing relegation because they've had 4 straight losses, so they're getting towards the bottom of the table and could potentially go down to the lower league if they keep it up.
And I think we've discussed this before, but real quick, relegation is...
Relegation is, so there's multiple tiers of English football. So
Sure.
the AFC Richmond plays in the Premier League, which is considered tier 1. The lowest, I think it's bottom 3 or 2 or 4 teams. I'm pretty sure it's an even number. I think it's bottom 2. Bottom 2 teams get relegated to the lower tier, and the top 2 teams of the lesser tier get promoted to the higher tier.
Oh, I thought it was only one team.
No,
so 2 teams.
There are multiple teams. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's going to come into play later on. Then we find ourselves in
Spoiler alert.
in the press room. We're going to find ourselves in the press room where Keeley has arranged a sponsor... I don't want to say sponsor program because it sounds like he's in AA, but
He could be, man.
maybe he should be. Jaime is promoting a beer. I don't remember the name. It's something very German. Ends with Stein. And then we see he's just being Jaime in front of the cameras. He makes sure they get a picture of his...
Got to expose those tattoos, which he says is Chinese for arm, which is just
great.
Fantastic. But I did a little dive on the internet, and apparently the 2 symbols he has is more closely resembles sunset.
Okay.
It's day and fall.
Sunset is better than arm, but arm's a better joke.
But it's just better that the fact that what the actual Chinese on his arm is different than what he thinks it is. It's kind of that classic thing, like, a tattoo artist will give them just something that looks neat in Chinese,
right?
Like writing whatever, but means something completely different.
He does a great impression of a Brunicorn, and then he does a Beerby, which is his beer baby. I had to put that in parentheses so I remembered what it meant. In the back of the room, Keeley and Rebecca have a moment where Rebecca is concerned that Keeley and him have gotten back together.
I love Keeley's line to Rebecca. I'd kiss you on the mouth right now if you weren't so tall, but I'd have to climb that mountain or whatever.
Yeah, she's like, if I could reach those lips. So then Rebecca talks with Keeley and offers her a job to help find sponsorships for the club.
Which is awesome.
She recognizes that Keeley is good at bringing sponsors and people together. We discussed it a little bit earlier. At one point, Rebecca asks Keeley what she does, and she says something like, "I'm famous for almost being famous."
Yeah.
It's kind of thrown out there. My question has always been, what is Keeley's actual job? My assumption is that she's what people would call an influencer.
Yeah.
So she's got like an Instagram following because she takes modeling photos and looks good.
Well, and we saw those early modeling pictures that she had in Jamie's locker, the more risque ones, and wondering if she does that for kind of maybe some more of her influencing stuff. The other photo shoot we saw her was just kind of promoting a vodka.
Right.
So I'm assuming, she's just kind of a jack of all trades, does a lot of different things, and that's why she's like, she hasn't hit it big. She's not like on a big modeling. She's on the cover of magazines, but she's getting there.
So based on her wardrobe, because she wears a lot of like cargo pants and things with zips, my assumption is that she was in like a girl band like Spice Girl adjacent when she was much younger. And then she just kept the wardrobe and she's been wearing it for 15 years after the band broke up because...
I think they were the Sugar Gals.
The Sugar Gals. I love the Sugar Gals. Yes.
I like the theory. Give her a backstory.
So then Ted takes his family to the friendly
the
pub.
I love that pub. I love these pub hooligan guys.
Right. I wish I drank more beer because I would love to go spend time at the pub, throw darts, and have a pint. The 3 fans... I know that the tall black dude's name is Paul.
Paul's great. I love Paul.
One is like Gaz or some Baz.
Baz. He calls when he comes in.
B-A-Z, Baz. So Ted walks in. They insult Ted in front of his family. Baz tries to save, but Ted makes the comment, she's a coach's wife. She's heard it all.
Well, even she makes like a comment about like, ooh, good save.
Right.
Yeah.
The publican, the nice older lady that runs the pub, they're called publicans, hands Henry some darts, says, hey, go have fun, don't hit any regulars, which is great.
And what does he do? Not 3 seconds later, once they sit down at the table, boom, hits Paul.
He sticks Paul in the shoulder, and a great dart moment. Any type of dart violence, I'm a fan of.
It immediately reminds me of Shaun of the Dead, where Shaun takes one right to his head when he's trying to kill the zombies. You remember that bit?
I remember Shaun of the Dead. I don't remember that scene.
I think Nick Frost's character, he like literally takes, or no, it's like one of like the lesser friends of his girlfriend, and they're like, gives him the darts, like, oh, use these. So they throw it, and then like misses him, and then he's like, oh, this is good. Gets a zombie in the head, and then it falls over or something, and then gets Shaun right in the head. And it just, and then Shaun, when he yanks it out of his head, there's just a little splurt. It's just fantastic.
I love those movies. So what I noticed with this conversation with Michelle and Ted is they sit at this pub. They have been married for, I'm going to say,
they said?
At least 10 years, because their boy's at least 8.
Yeah, fair.
They sit at this table and they talk like they have never met before. It's like very awkward. It's like she is like attempting to make small talk about whether or not the fish and chips comes in newspaper. I guess they're trying to show that it's awkward between them, or like there's like a breakdown. Well, but I just felt like...
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen your significant other for a while, and obviously the circumstances of them kind of splitting apart and kind of Ted giving her space, I imagine that first initial meetup is going to be awkward because like you're clearly not in a great spot in your relationship. And I think, as we find out later, she's trying her best to kind of make this work, and that's why she kind of gives a little joke and kind of sets Ted up for kind of a one-liner with the fish stuff. But I think she's struggling internally, and we haven't really seen that, and this is kind of the first time where you can kind of see her side a little bit.
So that's how you took it. You didn't think it was just like weird.
It's definitely weird. It's going to be awkward again. Like Ted didn't leave and leave his family behind because he wanted to. He left because he was giving her space, and that's not leaving on great terms. So when you're first coming back together and sitting down and trying to talk through it, I think it's going to be a little awkward.
Okay. I've had the experience where I've left my spouse for a long period of time, But
did you leave your spouse because you were like in a rough spot? Like, no, you left your spouse because you were going to work or you were doing other things.
I don't know. Let me ask her next time I see her. In 6 months when she comes back, I'll ask her that question. So then we are with Keely and Jaime after the photo shoot. That scene ends with Paul getting stabbed, I should say.
Okay.
Then Keely and Jaime are walking down the hallway. It's after the photo shoot. Jaime offers to go over the photos after the photo shoot, and he wants to do it naked. He clearly wants to still have some sort of physical, tickling, hugging relationship, I'm assuming. I don't know what adults do. Yeah. And she makes a comment about making sure none of the crap photos make it, public. And he does the great line where he's like, "There's not going to be any crap photos," and he points at himself, which is wonderful.
I feel like what we're just doing kind of throughout this episode, like the audience already knows how much of a jerk Jaime is, just based on everything we've seen thus far. But I think they're trying to set up, like, at the end of this episode with kind of how this progresses, they're trying to just keep like pounding and pounding how much of a jerk he is. And I think this just continues that.
Right, we're reinforcing that she's made a good decision. Then they end their conversation, her telling Jaime that she doesn't want to hook up with him or essentially hang out with him, play board games, I don't know. Roy overhears this from down the hallway. He decides to stick his nose in their business for some reason by agreeing with Keely that she shouldn't hang out with Jaime. He says something like, "I'm forced to hang out with that guy. You do it by choice." And she's like, "Well, we broke up." And he's immediately excited by this news. One would say even aroused by this news.
Yeah, the camera was above the waist, so we can't tell for sure.
I don't understand that reference, but I'm going to move on forward without breaking stride. She informs them that they've broken up. Roy does this very funny thing. Well, she's like gets on him for getting in her business, or like, hey, anytime I make a decision, I'll make sure I run it by you, Roy.
Yeah.
And so she's walking off, and he's trying to kind of explain himself, and in pure Roy fashion, he's like shouting down the hallway, and he's like, well, today in training, Sam was wide open, and Jaime wouldn't pass to him. Like he's
that's what I've got to deal with.
Right. He's trying to justify his poor actions by something that happened at practice, which there's really no correlation, but it's just great. And then she ends up like texting him something about
can I go use the toilet?
Yeah.
And he has a little toilet emoji there too. Good emoji work.
My question is, how does she have his number?
Look, they're friends, they're chums. Maybe they hang out.
Are they friends? Once again, they seem like...
I say that just because I feel like there should be a reason, but there is no reason. Like, if Jaime and him and Roy do not get along, there's no reason that they would go on these, like, double dates or anything else. Like, when Roy confronts Jaime in that club that one time, Keeley was, like, very surprised to kind of see him.
Right.
So maybe Roy's, like, Keeley's emergency contact.
Yeah, see, that doesn't make any sense to me, but... I understand the joke, and I thought the joke was very funny, because he mutters something like, oh, that's pretty good, or something.
I think he just says, yes, you can.
Right. And so then we're with the Lassos at Ted's flat. They're building a double-decker bus out of Legos. We go into like a dream sequence where Ted is having a lovely time with his wife and son, and everything's going to be good, and she's going to stay, and they're going to be in love forever, and Henry's going to have two parents that aren't divorced, and he's going to turn out just fine. Have you had the pleasure of having to build Legos recently?
No, my son is still too young at this point. He plays with little Duplos, so we kind of call those Legos. They're just massive Legos.
Sure.
But no, we haven't built like a full-on set. I believe you have with your...
Oh, they consume your life once you open a package of them. Some well-meaning aunt or uncle will give your kid Legos, and it'll be like, hey, there's 4 million pieces in this set, and then you're building like the Hogwarts castle, and there goes your Saturday, your Sunday, and then you don't show up for work on Monday because it hurts so much.
But looking at like the packet that Ted has for this bus, and like the bus is big, but I mean I've seen bigger Lego sets, and like it is seemingly a long journey to get through.
Oh yeah, what I remember as a kid is we just had like a bucket of Legos, and it was like build whatever you want. Nowadays, there's like a booklet that tells you every move to make to build something. And then what I find is like once it's built, it's just kind of like a model now. It's not like...
Yeah, you can't like play with it as much.
Right.
So that's what our parents did. They probably just threw away the instructions, threw it all in a bucket, and then said, have fun.
A scathing indictment of Lego. Come at us, Lego. So then, the next morning, Ted goes out to get breakfast. There's this funny shot of the poster that's on the window.
And we did find out that the guy was in the green suit was ending up being the lion.
Was a CGI lion. So it's Kafka vodka, the caffeinated vodka that she's selling, which sounds delicious.
Isn't Kafka like a Kafka-esque? Isn't that like a writer or something? Or like a... I feel like it's a famous somebody. Not spelled like that. I think it's with a K.
Kafka. I mean, it sounds familiar. There was
Charlie
Kafka, the famous comedian.
No, that's Robin Williams.
Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey did play Robin Williams in 1 Hour Photo. You're right. So then Ted comes back with a scone, which he gives his kid. He's like, hey, it'll suck all the spit out of your mouth, which is wonderful. We think his wife, Michelle, is lovingly looking out the window, but instead she is weeping because she's dying inside because she's having such a tough time living with such a wonderful man.
No, that's not what she's doing.
That is exactly what's happening. No. She doesn't appreciate Lasso. She's like level -3 of the Lasso church.
Gosh, you're so harsh on her.
I just don't understand, Tom. I don't understand.
She's battling her inner demons. She made the trip out here with her son. She knows how good of a relationship he has with her son, how good of a man Ted Lasso is. But she just knows she's not in love with him anymore, and she's coping and trying to deal with it.
Ted is a handsome man. I don't understand what the issue is here. He's handsome. He's funny. He's generous. He's probably a generous lover if you mix those two together.
Not everybody wants that.
Oh.
100% of the time, all the time.
Interesting.
I'm just saying, man. Like,
okay.
There's a lot of people in this world, and a lot of people don't want that.
All right. Well, let's put up a poll
Like Rebecca.
on
Do you think Rebecca and Ted would have a relationship that would be successful?
I think that Rebecca could not do better than Ted Lasso.
Like, I get it. Like, Ted is an awesome character and people strive to be him, but, like, relationships are a different thing, man. When you're living with somebody 24/7 and that kind of stuff and raising a kid, like, I don't know. I mean, we're both married. We have relationships, but I can understand it. We just don't have a lot of the backstory for Michelle.
No, I completely agree with you that we are great examples of people that are in loveless marriages that are just struggling through. You're right. I agree.
I did not say that.
I know that's exactly what you said and meant, and I will go along with it. So she makes the comment that she's struggling. She says, I keep waking up hoping that I will feel like I did in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
She apparently doesn't realize marriages are hard or work or any of those things. So, and they always naturally devolve into loveless partnerships, but that's just what marriage is. And that's what the good book intended. So,
That's just love.
it's broken up by Henry coming in with no pants and a jersey on. We find out they're going to the game as a family. It's a great moment, and you can clearly see that Ted is upset by Michelle and I get, feels bad for her, but obviously he wants them to work out.
Yeah.
We find ourselves in Ted's office where the brain trust is slowly gathering, which is so great. So Ted is expressing his marital issues to the two guys you want to express your marital issues to.
Yeah, totally.
Coach Beard and Nate. Nate has a funny moment where he's like, marriage, it's so...
We don't know. Nate's not married?
No, Nate's not married,
not married.
never been married. Because
Okay.
he goes, marriage is so complicated. And then he like immediately abandons ship and he's like, I don't know, I've never been married. Beard, have you ever been married? And Beard makes this noise, which I think I can copy pretty accurately.
Oh, man,
he goes,
that is you.
Beard, have you ever been married? And he goes, ha! Something like that. Sorry for the mic spike, but you're welcome.
That is you to a T, man. That is your laugh you do when you get a good...
Yeah, when something hits me hard,
Yeah.
there's a punch of a laugh that happens. I've been made fun of before for it, but it's who I am. So then we find that Beard is not one for long-term relationships. Nate's never been married. Most of my notes just repeatedly say I don't like Michelle, so I don't really know how to expand on this. I know there are intricacies with relationships. I know, like, we're only seeing a part of Ted. I understand that, but I don't think from a show perspective or a writing perspective, they have really made the case as to why Michelle should leave. That's probably my main point.
Okay.
I feel like it's a story point that they make, and if you don't pay too much attention to it, you're just kind of like, okay, the marriage is dissolving. Mm-hmm. But like, if you really look at it, like, what is Ted doing, or I don't know.
No, I'm with you. We've touched on that with some of the other stuff about, like, Ted coming in and flipping Roy and having him be the first domino. Like, they only have 10 episodes in this arc. They want to tell a specific story in this season. Like, if they would have just flipped Roy immediately after 2 episodes and then everything just starts to become hunky-dory, it would be weird.
Sure.
And I think you can equate that to what's happening with Michelle in this relationship. Like, they want to explore it with Ted. At the end of this episode, they want to end it. They want to move them off in their own separate directions, but they definitely don't allow it to breathe and see more of Michelle's backstory like they do with a lot of these other characters, so we at least get a sense where they're coming from. And
Sure.
I think it's like what you said. That's to your point. I think to my point is we just don't know enough about Michelle. That the show hasn't shown us enough to be able to, I think, draw such strong conclusions
Sure.
about her character.
I guess I just needed a scene of Ted like unruly. He's doing lines of like barbecue sauce off the counter, and he's like losing his mind, and she's like, no, not in front of our boy, and his like got barbecue sauce just smeared all over his nose, and he's like, I can't get enough.
That's gonna be a great deleted scene, like flashback sequence.
Yeah, but we don't get that, so it is what it is. What's so funny is Higgins comes in. He's like, "Oh, I'm excited to be invited into the Brain Trust." They bring him down under the guise of he's looking for his phone.
Which I don't understand. Why did Beard have his phone? Did he steal it? Did he leave it out?
I think this is just another way the show is trying to tell us that Higgins is a bit incompetent, that he has lost his phone. Beard finds it. Beard's great as he hands it back. He's
I love Beard. It's just the consummate, like, hey, it took some apps off to optimize performance. And then, of course, Higgins is like, oh, hope we didn't take battleships off. Oh, you took it off. That's okay. I shouldn't be playing it as much anyways. It's just awesome.
So
I love
great.
it. I love Beard.
And so we find out Higgins, and you made the right point in the beginning, is that why we see Higgins' family in that scene, I think, is to reinforce this moment where Higgins explains that he's been married for 28 years. They have 5 boys, 3 dogs, and a 20-year-old cat whose impending doom will emotionally and physically wreck him.
Me. Yeah, oh, so great.
It's such good writing.
That did, like, turn a quarter on me with Higgins. Like, I did not like him in the beginning because he is just that yes man, but you know he was probably doing it for the money, and now that they showed his family, they love for animals, all that stuff, and he's just kind of holding it together for his family. Like, I'm definitely turning a page on.
So it's his love of a dying cat that has turned you
of animals, correct?
Oh, interesting.
Animals
okay.
And children.
Funny physical comedy bit. It's very subtle. You got to pay attention to it. Nate is kind of sitting on this taller shelf while they're talking in the office, and Higgins goes to like sit next to him, but the shelf is just a little bit too tall. So like Higgins kind of struggles to like get his rear end on the shelf, and then he just kind of gives up and sidles back in front of the doorway.
But Nate's physical comedy in this, where he's kind of going to the side, giving him room, and then realizing he can't come off, he kind of comes back. Nate's physical comedy greater than Higgins.
Okay. I also found out that Nate hates cats. So there you go. And
wait, Nate hates cats?
Yes.
Did you say it?
No, we're competing with the two. So you said Higgins turned you.
Flew over my head.
It's fine. No one will hear this. It'll all be edited out. So then Higgins makes a very poignant point, which is, because I think Ted, asked him about, hey, have you guys been through rough times? Mm-hmm. Higgins says, did you not hear what I just said about the cat and the 5 boys in the little house? And he says, if you're with the right person, even the hard times are easy, which is a great line, and I think true to the most part. I mean, I think hard times can just be hard times, but obviously being with the right person helps out quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So then we find out that 999 is their 911.
That's a great bit. I love how they just dissect the ridiculousness of it being 999, where toddlers can easily just tap that on a phone. And then Nate and Higgins both making eye contact, like, yeah, that actually explains a lot. I think we just solved it, why that happened so much. That was good.
Sure. This brings us to game time. They're in the locker room. Roy gathers them all up. They do the 1, 2, 3, hands in. I think that's how that works.
I have to say again, like Roy, just like his mannerisms and stuff like that, he seems kind of awkward. Like he's not like.
You don't think he spent a lot of time in the locker room?
I don't. I do not think this is an athletic man. I love him as a character. I love the actor. I do not think he's an athletic man.
I'm going to agree with you because there's a moment where he goes, everyone, hands in! And just the way he moves and does it, it's super awkward. He's never gotten a group of sports people together, too. Please don't come at us, Brett Goldstein. You're a wonderful man. Ted, who is kind of... We see him fraying a little bit, just what's going on with his personal life. Gets on Jaime. He's like, Jaime, why didn't you cheer with the team? Why didn't you put your hand in? And Jaime just kind of tells him off. He's like, listen, I will continue to listen to your yeehaw BS, which is great when he says yeehaw. I'm going to ignore it because this team is tragic. And then Ted is kind of about to... And Jaime points out, I score all the goals. Everyone's here to see me.
Yep.
Like, I don't care about the rest of you, essentially.
Yeah. He's given up. Like, he's had the conversations with Ted. You thought he might be a domino that flips. Like, last episode, Roy and him seem to get some kind of dynamic. So, like, is he going to turn? And this just solidifies it. Like, nope. He is all in himself. And, again, the episode is just constantly reiterating how much of a jerk this man is.
Right. And the reason he's not in is he's taking a selfie, which I just feel like maybe Jaime is what our culture has become. It's just
Go on.
selfies and not cheering with the team and all about you. And if you can, be an influencer, then that's what's important. I feel like that's what Fox News has told me society is now. So Ted and Jaime are interrupted because Henry comes in. Henry's excited to see.
Yeah, but like to your point, like it was right before Ted was just gonna rip him up, and Henry comes in, and they have that moment where like Henry's super excited to see like his idol,
right?
Because he doesn't know this guy; he's just a sports guy on TV, and Ted is just the look in his face as he's like signing the jersey and all that stuff. He's just like, man, this is not the kind of guy you should be looking up to.
So, if Ted Lasso was not the coach of Richmond, AFC Richmond, do you think Henry would have any idea who Jaime Tart was? An 8-year-old American boy.
I mean, if he plays soccer, yeah, he could be. It could have been a team. Probably not. But, well, I take that back. Like, if you like Lionel Messi or a lot of these, like, famous soccer players, I would imagine younger kids know who the famous soccer player is, but probably won't necessarily follow the club.
Okay.
So I think maybe there is, if he's that big of a star.
Sure. Jaime, before Henry comes in, makes the comment that all the people are going to cheer for him.
Oh man, what a great!
And he does. Jaime Tart,
Baby Shark,
as Baby Shark.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you the floor. Go ahead, Tom.
I mean, I do have a 2-year-old, so we do listen to the song very often.
Yep.
So
let's hear it. No stalling. Here we go.
Jaime Tart do 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 do. Jaime Tart do 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 do. Jaime Tart do 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 do. Jaime Tart.
Boom. That was great.
Thank you.
His little hip thrust thing that he does
He's got a,
is at Ted is just beautiful in all sorts of ways. Anyway, so we see Henry is excited to see Jaime. You can tell Ted is annoyed because his son sees this guy as his hero, and Ted knows that he's a dirtbag. Jaime, very kind. He just knows how to turn it on. He turns it on for the kid. He signs his autograph. He's like, hey, when I score a goal, it's going to be for you. But he can't help himself. He's like, it's also going to be for me. It's going to be for us.
Yeah.
And so he signs it. He walks off. He says something like, good lad. And then I feel like he calls Beard good boy or something like that. Or maybe he just says it to get at Beard too as he's passing him. And then they walk Henry out onto the field, and we have the game start, and you can just tell Ted is not excited that his son is celebrating that jackass. So, start of the game, real quick, we flash to the pub crew. So, I think
as the commentators are setting up the game and all that kind of stuff, it flashes to the pub,
and Baz screams something at Ted Lasso, and Paul goes, nice family, though. And Baz is like, dang it, Paul, don't humanize him.
I love that line.
Which is a great line.
Because, people always just love to vilify it and never like to think, people are people. Like, when all these people in the stands are calling him wanker, this is a guy. He's got a family.
He's got a family. So,
love Paul.
During the game, I felt like they lean really heavily on the announcers. The announcers are doing a lot of heavy lifting, not only for game stuff, but story stuff in the show. Which part of me appreciates how they wrote that in, because those guys are both soccer announcers, real soccer announcers,
voices,
right? Yeah. But they lean heavily on them to kind of explain some plot points, like Jaime Tart's going in for it. Is he going to pass? That's typically a rhetorical question with Jaime Tart. And then Jaime kicks a goal. Once again, rate Jaime's soccer playing, please.
I mean, it was pretty solid. Again, I think in the game, this is the first game we've seen, I think legitimate footage of playtime. We might have seen a highlight or something, but definitely very poor defending. But again, I understand the show is not about the soccer. It's about explaining the story of how much of a jerk Jaime is.
We see unselfish Jaime scores the goal and then just keeps screaming me and pointing at his jersey, which is wonderful.
Which is great because a common football celebration is guys pointing to their badge on their jersey. So
Sure.
they'll literally hold their jersey, point to it like, yes, this is my club. I'm happy to play for them. But then you've got guys like this. And he is not the first soccer player to do this. There's other soccer players that do
in
that.
real life.
They will point to their back of their jersey and do it. It's a Ronaldo thing. Cristiano Ronaldo will do this.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I was just about to make a comment. Like, growing up in the 90s and late 2000s when I was a young lad, I can remember, like, players in the NFL and, like, the NBA being, like, super arrogant and being known for, like, that type of attitude. Mm-hmm. And I feel like as our culture has gotten more to the point of, like, not accepting those types of characters, all these players are, like, coached on how to give an interview. They're all like, man, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to have my teammates. We play to win. We play hard.
Give 110%.
Yeah. I really miss the days where a guy was like, well, I went out there and did it. I don't know what my team was doing, but I really handled it. Like, I miss those villains. Like your Deion Sanders or your... I'm trying to remember
Dennis
other
Rodman?
ones. Yeah, like a Dennis
villain.
Rodman. Those guys that just were like all about them and gave great press conferences. I feel like we need to bring that attitude back, not just in sports, but in society in general.
Well, I feel like it's more brand management. Like, if you do that, you're less likely to be able to get those sponsors and make that extra coin. That was probably more... I guess they didn't do as much back then.
Right. Tide's not going to throw money at you if you're a jerk. So we then come to a scene where Sam Obisanya gets injured on a play. He's down on the ground.
Oh, man.
There's this great moment where Jaime steps over him to go get the ball. Roy confronts Jaime, and he's like, check on your teammate, which is great. And then Jaime, just honestly, I mean, terrible human, great moment. He goes, hey, Sam, I'm going to have to, like, roll you over because you're in the way. And he flips Sam over. And that's when Roy gets set off.
Yeah,
and
then they go at it. Roy and Jaime go at it.
No forehead pushing, though.
No.
Legitimate, like, push fight.
I had the same thought. I thought they might go forehead to forehead. But this is odd to me. Like, the commentators make a note of this has actually happened before. And it wouldn't surprise me that teammates going at it ended up getting cards. So they both get yellow cards for this.
Right.
From what they see in this scene, there's nothing to really warrant that. Like,
sure.
They're not, like, they weren't, if they were head to head, like we talked about last episode, like, yeah, that could be a reason for a card. But when it's players just kind of going at each other, I don't think they would have done that. But anyways, it was very funny.
A yellow card, you don't get tossed from the game, right? A yellow card's like a warning. If you get 2 yellow cards, is that a red card, you're out? And then are you suspended for the next game? Am I remembering this right?
I don't know. They might have changed that rule in the Premier League recently, where you're not necessarily... No, I take that back. I think you still are.
You're suspended for the next game.
Whether it's 2 yellow or an automatic red, you're suspended for the next game.
Okay, got it.
As well as out for that game, and your team has to play down a man for the rest of the game.
Wonderful moment. Roy, being the leader that he is, goes to help Sam up, and Sam's like, it stopped hurting, but everyone was making such a fuss that I just stayed down. And Roy kind of pushes them back down, and he's like, listen, I want you to get up, act like you're injured, gesture like you could bravely play on. And Sam does that, and just the way everyone reacts.
It's the announcers, man.
Oh, the announcers, like, yeah, they carry that.
He's so brave. Look at him coming up. He still wants to stay and play for the team.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because I think this is why generally Americans don't like soccer, is all the flopping and stuff. And I think you kind of see it a lot more now in other sports more prevalently. Like I see like the NBA Finals. There was a whole lot of guys just flopping.
It's part of the game in the in the basketball. in the basketball, as we call it here. I feel like flopping and like faking, like they do that thing at the 3-point line where they like throw their arms up.
Yeah.
It's like gamesmanship at this point, which is not fun.
Yeah, and I don't mind you trying to do that to get a foul. What I don't like, and what I think a lot of the American audience does not like, is guys falling to the ground, holding onto their leg, and like the camera will go on them, and they're in just utter agony. Like their leg is broken, like something massive has happened when they get up 3 seconds later. And you can see it if you're an avid soccer player or soccer watcher. It happens all the time. You can tell when a person is genuinely injured versus not, because they'll do that little thing where they'll kind of grind their teeth or whatever, and do kind of what Sam did with the little limps and stuff. So it's annoying, but I love how the show touched on it.
Right. No, it's a great moment. I didn't actually feel like Sam flopped. What I felt like Sam did, I feel like he was initially hurt, but I just think he stayed down longer
100%,
than possible.
Yeah.
And once again, Roy, just trying to be a good captain, kind of gives him the coaching of, hey, they're going to love this if you do this.
Yeah, it's great.
And as you mentioned, the announcers really hammer home what's going on. And then it's another scene where Jaime is driving down the field, and the announcers once again bring up, like, hey, is he going to take the extra pass?
Well, he's in this sequence, he has a free
it's
kick.
A penalty kick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a penalty kick. It's a free kick.
Okay, there's a difference.
A penalty kick is where the foul occurs inside the 18-yard box, and it would just be the player shooting.
And the goalie.
Yes.
Okay.
Player shooting 12 yards away and the goalie free shot. This is a free kick right outside the box, so like the announcers mentioned, Jaime can go for goal, he can shoot, which he probably should in this circumstance because he's that close to goal,
right.
Or he could cross the ball. So again, the announcers are saying, will he pass? Of course he won't. He's Jaime, he's going to shoot and go on frame. Which he does, and he scores the second goal to tie it up for the team.
Right, which is just great Jamie Tart soccer playing. Yeah. Wonderful soccer player. Is this... I'm trying to remember what sets Ted off in order to go do this.
I think it was it him going kind of doing the me thing again?
I don't remember why it sets Ted off, but Ted ultimately, we're right before half. We're like a couple minutes before half, which is another thing that I have questions on. But he runs up. We see some great cardio from Ted Lasso. Runs up to the box, says hi to his son and wife, and then says, to Rebecca, hey, I'm going to pull Jamie Tart out of the game. I just want to make sure you're okay with it, which is funny because I don't think a Premier Soccer manager would ever do that.
No, it's kind of weird to me. Like, I don't get what they're doing with this, in all honesty. I don't think he needs this.
I think the moment is to show that, like, Rebecca recognizes that, hey, this is bad for the team in terms of it's a silly thing to do, but she just wants Ted to implode and the club to implode.
But I don't think you needed it. I mean, by the end of this episode, when she's like kind of fake happy for them winning when she doesn't want them to win, I think that sells it enough. You don't need Ted going up there.
Okay.
It's kind of funny, I guess, for him running up into the stands.
Right, he's got his head over the thing.
Yeah, or he could see his family and talk to his family mid-game,
right.
But I think it's an unnecessary scene.
Okay, well, I loved it. It was my favorite scene of the show. I love that Ted then comes down.
Oh, man. This line to the ref is so great.
Go ahead.
He just says, hey, highlighter.
Because the guy's in a bright yellow shirt.
Yeah, a lot of the refs are generally, they don't have a specific color they always wear. They'll generally wear just a different color than what the teams are. So if there's a team in all yellow, which is kind of interesting because they're playing what looks like to be Watford, who is a team that is yellow, but they're wearing just a lighter color of yellow.
Okay.
Generally, they'll be in something completely different, so you don't mix them up. But
Got
just a great line. I'm definitely going to call refs highlighters.
A highlighter. So then he subs Jamie out. He tells the ref they put the numbers up. What's so funny is the reaction of the player that's going in. His name is Roberts, that is going to replace. He looks at who he's replacing on the board, and he's like, what? Why are we taking Jamie out? So they pull... they pull Jamie out. Roberts goes in. Jamie's clearly upset. Before this happens, when Lasso gives the numbers to highlighter, Beard sees it, and Ted walks over and stands next to him. Beard gives them this look, kind of like, "Are you serious? Are we doing this?"
All right.
And then he goes, "Okay," and you can kind of tell Beard respects the guts and understands that, hey, Jamie is a bit of a cancer on this team.
Yeah.
And so if we cut him out, that's not I think he agrees with the decision ultimately.
I think he does, but he's also a little bit hesitant because, again, as we know about Beard,
he wants to
win at all costs. So he knows Jamie scoring these last two goals, is taking him out right now the best idea. He knows probably long term it is, but he maybe struggles with it a little bit, but right. Beard's on board.
Yep. So then we find ourselves in the locker room at half. He subbed him right before half, which I think is interesting. Can Jamie come back in the second? Once you're subbed out of the game.
Correct.
Interesting. So they walk in. Jamie Tart's kit is on the floor. Nate picks it up, throws it in the basket. Ted gives a speech. He's like, hey, game's tied. Congratulations. But we as a team are broken. We need to change. And then he gives this whole speech about how change is uncomfortable, but necessary for growth. He equates going through puberty and some of the changes that happened during that time. And he describes a teacher of his that he started to feel squiggly inside about, and talks about, he's like, the first time I noticed tan lines, and that's where we get the title of the
Can I
episode.
ask, though, it's an odd name it's a throwaway line to call the episode Tan Lines. Does that have some kind of deeper meaning or like double entendre that I'm missing?
No, I think it's just because that's the story he tells at a pivotal moment in the locker room.
Okay.
I didn't look it up, but I don't think... email us if we missed something here, or send us a MySpace message.
But she's a striking woman. Not classically beautiful, but striking. I love that.
That's a great line. So then the team, you can kind of see, enjoys his speech. He's telling them, hey, we've got to embrace change. And then you can kind of see as he's talking that he is also talking about his wife.
He's clearly, molding worlds and stuff.
He's thinking that, hey, for him, change is going to be uncomfortable, to not have her around, to not be with her. But if that's what she needs in order to be happy, is letting her go, if that's the only way to truly make her happy, then, hey, we've got to change. And when he says her, the team all kind of like perks up, and they're like, her?
What?
And then... his line is...
Like, by her, of course, I'm talking about lady football.
And then Beard in the back, good save. Good save. Which is the second time they use good save. And then, before they go out, he's like, Sam, we're going to move you up to midfield. You can explain to me what that means?
Yeah, so like we kind of talked about, moving him up to midfield, so he's getting him more involved in the attack.
In the offense, okay.
But I love what Ted does here at the end, too, where he just kind of helps solidify like the team coming together. Like, we need change, where we're at a crossroads right now, and he has the team like, I need everybody to look at me while I say this. He doesn't say a word. He just turns and just bangs on that believe board, and it's just like just from like a sports standpoint,
sure.
I love that. That's a cool emotional moment, and that's kind of indicative of what Notre Dame is famous for doing. That they've got a sign that says we play like champions today. I'm probably butchering that, but it's like something like champions, and they all hit that as they're leaving the locker room. So I really love that. It was a really cool, powerful kind of sports moment.
I agree. Gave me goosebumps. If you get to watch it again, watch Isaac's reaction on the bench. He overacts the hell out of the moment and acts like a gunshot went off. He's like on the bench, like flailing wildly. He's so excited by the hand slap. Good job, Isaac. Incredible work.
Pause.
After he slaps the board, what I really like is Roy and Sam walk up to the whiteboard where Beard's going through the changes. And if you listen, Roy says, I never really liked Tart, to Sam. And Sam goes, we know, Roy.
Yeah.
Like, Roy acts like like he was able to keep it a secret that he didn't like Jaime. When they fought on the field, they fought in the locker room the last game.
Yeah.
But I never really liked Tart. Good secret. So then we cut to the game time, and someone, I don't know who it is, takes the extra pass to Sam. They score the winning goal. They win the game. Once again, a very cool sports moment. Like, Sam gets the winning goal. The extra pass is there. Hey, be unselfish. Make the extra pass. It's going to work out for the group, and it works out for him. And then the crowd is cheering for Ted and Beard says something like...
Yeah, I just love the way he kind of says, where he hears them all still saying the same thing they've been telling Ted all over and over again, just wanker. But like the way they're saying it's like same word, but different. It's
more of a cheer.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more love in the air, which winds bring love. So, and then Ted says something like, yeah, it's kind of like when in the 90s bad meant good.
In the 80s.
In the 80s, forgive me. In the 80s.
It's like when bad meant good, and he's like, who was the president? Like Beard's like, who was the president back then?
Ronald Reagan.
The actor? He just gives this great Doc Brown impression, which is great.
And Doc Brown is from
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, sure. I knew that. I didn't have any issue remembering that.
Did you not get that reference when they first said it?
I did not the first time, but by the third or fourth time I've seen the episode, I realized what he was doing.
Yep.
But the first time I watched it, I didn't know what impressions he was doing.
Classic line.
Henry, Ted's son, runs onto the field. Dad, what's a wanker?
What's a wanker? And then Ted has to kind of delicately say what a wanker is, where he says, it's a man who likes to be alone with his thoughts.
Alone with his thoughts. And then we're in the final sequence where a couple of different things are happening. And they do this almost at the end of every episode.
It's like the Full House style kind of ending.
They're cutting to like 3 different scenes. Someone's talking over it. Really, emotional moment. Ted's talking with Michelle, releasing her from her obligation to try and feel something for him.
Yikes, that's one way to put it. Jeez.
We find out that they met in school. And he makes some comment about, what are the chances we would have met in a parking lot, which is then cut to the parking lot of the stadium. So as he's making that comment about their
it's a good segue. I didn't catch that.
Relationship ending, or their relationship that is ending now, it started in a parking lot. We find Roy and Keeley, and Roy is like, hey, and Keeley's like in the trunk of her car. She's clearly scared, and she says something like, well, you snuck up on a woman
in a parking lot
at night. Because he's like, oh, did I scare you? She's like, yeah, Roy, you did.
That's really good though, because I didn't catch that at all. Like, so Ted told Michelle like that's where their relationship kind of started.
Yeah, he makes the comment that who would have known back at school we would have been like the only people in that parking lot that night. So that's how they.
That's really cool. I didn't catch that. I love that because again, like this kind of starts setting up Roy and Keeley to maybe have some sort of budding relationship.
Sure, unless Ted gets in there first, but it also shows the selflessness of Ted. He is willing to let his wife go. She is going to go selfishly be happy elsewhere without him, but he is willing to be unhappy and let her go so that she can be happy. It's fine. You don't have to agree, but it's the truth, and I believe it.
But do you think long term Ted would be happy in this relationship if he knows how unhappy she is?
I think Ted's going to be happy no matter where he's at. So yes.
All right.
That's fair. I mean,
in reality, this break.
It's fair. If she's going to be unhappy, he has to spend the whole time like trying. Eventually, that becomes like resentful. The person I feel the most for is Henry, their kid, tough. Because
and Ted left. I mean, he left to give her some space, but that's got to be incredibly difficult for him to leave his very impressionable aged son for months at a time.
Right, but he does make a point of the person that the idea for him to leave was the wife and their therapist. Those two were the ones that were like, oh, she needs space, why don't you go to England?
Yeah.
So, once again, Ted's great, everyone else is crap.
But so, can I ask you though, like...
Oh, we're not going to sum it up there?
Well, okay. No, you get to the next line that you hate.
Oh, well, Ted says something like, I swore I'd never quit at anything in my life. Mm-hmm. And his wife says, and I can't say this with any seriousness because I think she's like, Ted, you're not quitting, you're just letting me go. Semantics. You're quitting. You should stay together and be miserable. At least for Henry's sake.
Yeah, I mean, so I get it. Like, we talked about it a handful of times here. This is kind of rushed. We don't understand really what's kind of going on. Well, we understand what's going on with their relationship, but I understand you don't like the way it's played out. But I have to ask you, did you just hate this scene so much because of, like, not hate the scene, but, like...
Oh, I loved the scene.
Was it not emotionally resonating with you? Because, like, I teared up watching this scene. Because I thought Sudeikis acted the heck out of this. I thought they're back and forth, like, in the rain. Like, we're seeing some, like, real London here where it's just raining constantly. But I just thought this scene was shot so well, regardless of whether you think this was earned or whatever. Like, I was absolutely tearing up watching it.
Jason Sudeikis does an incredible job. Michelle does an incredible job. They're both... I mean, no, the scene emotionally it
rose from the ashes.
No. It affected me.
Yeah,
very much so. But I just, as I have evaluated the relationship and why it's ending, from what we're given from the show, his just the fact that he's like, oh, it feels like quitting, and she's like, no, you're just letting me go. I'm just bothered by her.
Yeah.
But the scene itself, really well done. No, still emotionally affecting, and that's why, like, I'm upset for Ted. I am upset for Henry. I don't know what she's doing. And maybe that more of that will develop. Maybe we find out that Ted does have a barbecue sauce habit, and like he, had to give away the second car, and he was taking the tithe money and spending it on.
Because that's what we want in this show. We want our main character, who's an optimistic, awesome guy, to just at some point become a monster.
Sure, exactly, for that sweet Kansas City barbecue sauce. But no, they both do it. Forgive me. They did it. They do a great job. Mm-hmm. The scene was affecting. I don't understand her. But that's fine. Relationships are messy and weird and very complicated.
Nate said it very well.
Nate did say it. Nate says most things very well.
Yeah. But I also like to just kind of button up this emotional scene was the music. And I believe, was it Mumford & Sons? It sounded like that same singer that does the...
Yes.
It is. Okay.
It was Mumford & Sons. The song is called Forever. So Forever by Mumford & Sons.
Or apparently just some of the time, apparently according to Michelle, right? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Ted would laugh at that. But then the best part of it is Ted, clearly affected, sees his son off, sees his soon-to-be ex-wife off, and who shows up to comfort him?
The man, Beard.
Coach Beard shows up with a pint. They sit on the bench in the rain. I don't know if this is a thing, but they cheers and then they touch their glasses to the bench.
Yeah.
Is that a tradition or something you're aware of?
I didn't look it up. It could just be like a cheers through them. I don't know if it is I'm sure there could be some other meaning behind it.
I feel like I've seen it in other places where they cheers, they touch, and then they. So maybe
if we were a better podcast, we would have looked that up beforehand.
No, we're going to leave some mystery in this. We're going to let our audience be the sleuths. Send us the answers at teambingepodcast@gmail.com, please. The episode ends. The one thing I did want to mention is Henry is playing soccer, and this is a very important point. While the two parents are talking, Henry is playing soccer with the girl that Ted has played soccer with, that we've seen. That character's name is Shannon. Boom, mystery solved.
I feel like you're really hyping Shannon a lot here. Is she going to continue to be a big part of this show?
Maybe Shannon joins the team. I don't know.
All right.
I don't know. That is the end of this episode. I obviously expressed some frustrations with some of the character motivations in it. Still very good, and obviously like making Ted more complex. I'm interested, although I've seen it, I'm interested in revisiting the next episode and how this is going to affect Ted coaching the team, because all this like personal stuff will bleed into
it's going to still weigh on. Like we've seen in the show, it's like this was a very emotionally resonating sequence for Ted, and if we start the next episode where he's all just happy and go lucky,
sure,
yeah, that's definitely going to take away what they did and built so much in this episode. So excited to keep this journey going.
So next week will be episode 6, and Tom is going to give us the name of that episode. Everyone go out and watch.
I believe it's called Skit Scat Scoodle Doot Flip Flop Flea.
Okay. He will now spell that for you so that you can look it up. Thank you for joining us. I'm Julian.
And I'm Tom. Thanks for joining, everybody.
We're Team Binge. We'll see you next week.